Because you'll find companies who want to put in their proposal documents, we're an award-winning organization. Fluff. We're best in class. Fluff. Not saying those things are not true, because they may be, but everyone else is saying the same thing. Proven proprietary systems. So what? How does your service or product offering meet the need of that customer? Powerful suppliers can demand premium prices and limit your profit. This is one of the key reasons why I do not subscribe to middleman strategy. Welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Curtis A. Merriweather Jr. And in 2020, I was named a game changer by the White House Policy Advisor for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And I want to serve as your government contracting coach. Now, the purpose of this channel is to educate entrepreneurs. And the way we do this is through education and consultation support services. My goal is to help lower your learning curve and to accelerate your business profitability. Now, the way we're going to do this is by sharing advanced educational principles, but I'm going to simplify them. We're going to share practical experience and lessons learned over my 27 plus years of experience in the government contracting industry. Now, a lot of the things I teach on this channel can be applied to a more broader entrepreneurial construct, but many of you guys know me from the government contracting space, and that's where I'll be primarily talking from on this channel. Now, before I get into my content, I want you to like, I want you to share, and I want you to smash that notification bell. So anytime I release new content, you'll be notified most expeditiously. You guys already know about the 8-figure government contracting platform, and we also have our store page. So please drop on by there, look at some content on our page. Last but not least, before we get into our topic for today, I will be doing another information session. This will be free. If you're interested in some of my content, you want to ask me some questions, you want to learn more about my teaching style and how I educate entrepreneurs just like you want to tune in on December 5th, 2023. This will be the last information session for the year. We're going to get kicked off promptly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, December 5th. Registration is free, but registration is required. So this gives us a head count of how many participants we are expecting, so we make sure we have everything in place to accommodate the demand. So stay available to that. Now, I have a great conversation for you all today. Now, you've probably already seen, based on the title, what I'm going to talk about today. But I have a great conversation for you all planned. And let's just get ready to jump in. What we want to talk about today, primarily, and I get this question all the time, I want to teach you how. Now, we only have a few minutes, but I'm going to teach you at a very high level how to dominate your competition. Now, these are topics you typically don't hear on YouTube, but I always want to give you more value than you paid for. So we're going to talk about at a very high level, how to dominate the competition. If you want more detail, you need to drop in a course, schedule a strategy session, figure out how I can be your mentor, and we'll be able to go deep in these concepts. Just to give you a slight teaser today. So first thing we have to do, when we're talking about dominating our competition, we have to do a competition and market analysis. Now, I know I have not heard anybody on YouTube, especially in the government contracting space, talk about what I'm getting ready to talk about today. So pull your pen, paper, pull out your iPhone, however you take notes. This is going to be a fast but a great ride. So when I start talking about competition and market analysis, what are you talking about, Dr. Kirk? I'm talking about, number one, do you know what the competition intensity looks like? Now, when I talk about competition intensity, I'm talking about the degree of competition among existing firms. Because intense competition leads to reduced profit potential and You got basically companies competing for the same piece of the pie in the industry. So do you understand the competition in the space you're looking to enter into? That's number one. We're still talking about competition and market analysis. The second thing you need to think about in our competition and market analysis is the threat for substitutes. These are your copycats. I have a lot of copycats on YouTube who look at my content, and then creators go and they try to create content similar, and I start hearing them talk about things they haven't heard about before, but I digress. So this is the availability of substitute products that will limit your ability to raise your prices. So is there a copycat in your industry that may be forcing you to keep your prices low? The third thing we start talking about competition and market analysis is the bargaining power of buyers, the bargaining power of customers. Said a different way, powerful buyers have a significant impact on price. They can force you to keep your prices low. Now you can raise them, but it may mean that your sales suffer. Number four, when we're talking about competition and market analysis, the bargaining power of suppliers or vendors. Powerful suppliers can demand premium prices and limit your profit. This is one of the key reasons why I do not subscribe to middleman strategy, because you give your suppliers, your subs, oftentimes an unfair advantage. And I'm all about the prime, the one taking all the risk. I'm all about maximizing profitability. And number four, these are considerations when we're talking about competition and market analysis. What are the barriers to entry? How easy is it for new people to come into that space you're playing in? Now, we're talking federal, we could talk commercial, we could talk international. How easy it is or hard, how easy or hard is it for new competitors to come in your space? This can act as a deterrent against new competition. These are the things you need to be thinking about when you're talking about adding a new service offering, going into a different market, whether that's in a different geographic area. These are the things you need to be considering. And if you're not thinking about these things and you haven't given them consideration, you're going to get your clock cleaned. Hear me. If you do not think about these things, you are going to get your clock clean. I don't want you to be caught off guard. Now, I'm not talking about brand new government contractors. I'm talking about my folks who've been in this space just for a little bit of time. But these are great things for new government contractors to be considering. If you're already considering these things out the gate, you are going to be leap years ahead of your competition. They're still trying to figure out how to start the organization. What's the tax ID number? How to do market intel. All those things are necessary. But what I'm talking about in this video, and specifically in this section of the video, are some advanced strategies. Now, if you're already thinking about these as a new company, you're going to be way ahead of the competition. And you're going to blow past your peers because they quite frankly haven't had time to think about this. So that's number one, your competition and market analysis. We're talking about how to dominate the competition. So let's get it ready to go into our next point. Number two, competition is need driven. Now, I know I just did a segment talking about how we got to do a competition and market analysis, but I need you to stay with me. Competition is need driven. I'm going to jump over to government contracting land for a second. But again, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today can be applied to the global entrepreneurial ecosystem. But contracting officers are not evaluating you against your competition. Hear me. Contracting officers are not evaluating your business against the competition. What they are evaluating is your fitness for the requirement based on their need. Let me say this again. Contracting officers are not evaluating you based on your competition. So it doesn't matter per se who you're competing against. What does matter is how well your company's service or product offerings are aligned with the needs of that customer, that agency, that entity. How aligned are you? You're competing, you're being measured against how well you stack up against their requirement, their need. If we're talking federal contracts, what's outlined in section C, L, and M? That's what you're being measured against. Because you'll find companies who want to put in their proposal documents, we're an award-winning organization. Fluff. We're best in class. Fluff. Not saying those things are not true, because they may be, but everyone else is saying the same thing. Unparalleled, proven proprietary system. So what? How does your service or product offering meet the need of that customer? So when you put two companies side by side, one can be smaller, one can be larger. We're going to make some assumptions. They all have the financial wherewithal to get this stuff done. We're going to already assume they got the past performance. So in that competition, the contracting officer wants to know who can best meet their needs. When I hand my baby off, who can best make sure my baby comes back home intact? If you're talking to a company that does nanny services, they're going to watch over your children. You can talk about how award-winning you are all day long. At the end of the day, that mother wants to know when she leaves her child in your care that her child is going to be okay. She don't care about your awards. She don't care about all your best in class. She wants to have some level of comfort that when she drops off little Bobby, when she picks little Bobby up, little Bobby's going to be in the same care she left them in, or in better care than when she dropped them off. And these contracting officers feel the same way. When they drop their requirement in your lap, are you going to give it back to them in a manner that at least meets the needs of the requirement, or exceeds? Does it meet or exceed? And although you may be going up against some stiff competition, who's going to do the job better and give my baby back to me in a better condition than when I left it? That's what I'm saying. Who's going to give me a technical solution that meets my needs? And if that's the case, they're going to keep coming back. Let's keep moving. Can you articulate? So you may have the best product or service offering, but can you, company, can you, entrepreneur, can you, CEO, articulate the alignment between what your organization provides and what the customer needs? The customer need determines the competition, and how well you stack up against that need determines who's going to win the work, who's going to win the opportunity. Again, everyone's talking about how they're best in class, and you should brag on you. But I need to see the bona fides. I need to see, do you really have what it takes to get the job done? Number two, customer need. Competition is based on customer need. It is completely need driven. If I have a different requirement, different need, your competitor may win. So it's going to be super paramount that we don't try to give our customers cookie cutter based approaches. Let me just keep moving, because I can open up a whole nother can of worms, and I only have a limited amount of time on this video. Let's go to our next point. Business growth must be controlled. Lord Jesus, I could camp out right here. Business growth must be controlled. Now, I'm going to say something you probably never heard, especially on the government contracting channel. Fast growth is worse than not growing. Let me say this again. Fast growth is worse than not growing at all. Now, many novice entrepreneurs fall into this trap of growing too fast. Now, when you start talking about growing too fast, maybe they got too many service offerings. Maybe they're spread out geographically. They're trying to do work all across the world. Get a sure footing where you are. This is a mistake I see entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes make all the time. Do they understand the market conditions for the markets they're entering? Again, we're talking about some advanced strategies here, but I need my newbies to be thinking about this stuff as they grow. See, do you have the infrastructure and processes in place to manage and sustain growth? Do you? Do you have enough access to capital to sustain that long-term growth? And if we're doing work in other countries, Do you understand the currency exchange arbitrage when doing business internationally? We know there's differences in the different currencies. And are you prepared that if something negative occurs, if a downturn occurs, is your company prepared to ride that wave and manage that risk while still keeping your service intact? See, a lot of new entrepreneurs oftentimes get this puffed up in the chest, very prideful position because they have a little bit of success. They now try to take on this world domination mindset, but there's nothing wrong with it. Just you have to do it smartly. How do you plan to manage the risk? We don't worry about the upside. The upside will take care of itself. Can I manage the downside? I have to manage the aha. I have to manage the got you. Have you even identified what those risks are? And sometimes as entrepreneurs, we got to learn to say no. It could be a great opportunity, but it may not be a great opportunity for you. Maybe you don't have the infrastructure in place. Maybe your processes are not quite nailed down yet. Maybe you don't understand all the risk inherent in taking on this work. So sometimes we have to say no. We have to say yes to the customer and no to the opportunity. That's all I'm saying. We say yes to the customer, but no to the opportunity. So what do you mean, Kurt, when I say yes to the customer, no to the opportunity? I want to let my customer know I don't think we're the best equipped to do this. So I want to keep our relationship intact. So I'm saying yes to you because I want this long-term, enduring, sustainable relationship, but I got to say no to this opportunity because it may damage our long-term relationship. Y'all, let me keep moving. Let me keep moving. Growth must be controlled. You got to control the growth. Let me keep moving because I want to get through all of my points. Do you understand the financial landscape? This is point number 4. Do you understand the financial landscape? So whether we're talking national, international, if you're talking internationally or globally, you need to understand the financial landscape from a global perspective. Do you understand what the World Bank is doing? Do you understand what the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is doing and how that affects the basket of currencies globally? But we're going to stay focused on the U.S. just for today's conversation. But I would be negligent if I didn't talk about the international implications. So finance must be considered nationally and internationally. Now, when we're talking national, now I'm recording from the United States of America, the great old US of A. The Federal Reserve is the central banking system of the United States. Now, every country has a national bank. In the United States, the national bank is the Bank of America. You go to England, it's going to be the Bank of England. Every country has a national bank. And in the US, we have a Federal Reserve System. Now, stay with me. The Federal Reserve System sets monetary policy in the US. Their job is to try to keep the economy stable by implementing sound monetary policies. Okay? It's basic economics. Now, the federal funds rate is set by the Federal Reserve. Stay with me. The Federal Reserve rate is the interest rate which depository institutions, aka banks, trade federal funds with each other overnight. So what am I saying here? Every night, because of laws in the United States of America, banks have to have a certain amount of money on hand based on deposits. If they don't, they basically borrow money back and forth between one another to make sure they meet their liquidity requirements established by federal law. Now, that overnight loan is charged at a rate. It's called a federal funds rate. Now, the reason why this is important, we start looking at the Federal Reserve and the federal funds rate. As it goes up, it signals the availability of credit. When our interest rates go up, that's the federal government letting you know that the availability of money It's tightening. Doesn't mean that we don't have money. It means that they're signaling to the market that we're gonna put additional lending requirements on consumers and or business owners. I'm namely talking about business people here. So it's going to be a little more strenuous. It's going to be some more extra requirements to get the same capital you were getting when the interest rates were low. So the federal funds rate signals the availability of credit. It lets you know if credit is tight or loose. Tight credit, typically higher interest rate. Loose credit, typically lower interest rate. There's much more availability of money. When I tighten the credit, I raise the interest rate, I stiffen the requirements on banks to loan money out. When the interest rate goes down, I loosen the requirements, and it's going to be easier for consumers and businesses to get loans. This has nothing to do with your personal credit score. This is based on macroeconomic conditions. So I need to understand the financial landscape. Right now, our federal funds rate is slowly inching up. So it's signaling to business owners and to Wall Street that it's going to be a little more challenging than it was to get credit, to extend money. Again, doesn't mean that we don't have money availability. We're talking about the monetary conditions. We're talking about the monetary policy. So when you start seeing interest rates rise, you need to already have done some forecasting previously, and hopefully you had secured some of your financial needs. We cannot be reactive. We're talking about dominating the space. We cannot be reactive. We have to be forward looking. And these are some things, business owner, that you need to be mindful of when you're going out looking for financing sources. When you're looking to close financial gaps in the business that are forecasted. Remember, we borrow money when we don't need it, because that's when our risk is lowest, and that's when the bank is going to be more likely to give us the money we need. You borrow money when you don't need it. Let me keep moving. Number 5, you got to simply understand the political landscape. We talked about, number 1, competition and market analysis. We talked about competition is need driven. We talked about business growth must be controlled. We talked about understanding the financial landscape. And now we're talking about understanding the political landscape. We're talking about, remember in this video, we're talking about dominating the competition. So I have to understand the political environment in which I'm operating in. Now, when I look at international relations policy, there are 3 primary international relations policies that govern how nations govern themselves from a political standpoint. I'm either going to be a realist policy implementer. This is self-interested state compete. Talking about a state, we're talking about sovereignty and things like that nature. Don't want to make this super complicated, but when you talk about someone who implements a realism-based policy, their self-interested states compete for power and security. Now, why is that important? You'll see a national security focus. So you're going to see a lot of your 3-letter agencies rise to prominence. You're going to see some emphasis on your military spending. It's going to see military and economic power are the main instruments when implementing a realist or realism-based international relations policy. Remember, the world is global. We think globally, but we act locally. So what we're talking about here is understanding the tempo of the regions in which you're operating in, and understanding based on the paradigm selected, where's the money going to potentially go? If I got a ruler who's implementing policies that are considered more realistic or more realism from an international relations perspective, I'm going to see an emphasis on military and economic power as instruments. Now, liberalism, again, this is not talking about right or left, Republican, Democrat. This doesn't matter. We're talking about governance paradigms. So liberalism is a concern for power overridden by economic and political considerations. I know we're talking about international relations. Just bear with me. I'm going to bring the point home. Cooperation. This is the foci, or the focus here is cooperation, especially economics. It's the main foci. Now, economic exchange isn't, and international institutions are the main instruments here. And then last but not least is constructivist. This is more of a meta-analysis where state behavior is shaped by elite beliefs, collective norms, and social identities. The main focus here is socialization, not socialism, but socialization. And the identities and interests are the main interests. Let me bring this home. In America, based on who the president is, you will see a realist or a neo-realist perspective. You're normally going to see some paradigm between a realist and a liberalist perspective. Again, I'm not talking about Republican, Democrat, Independent. We're talking about international relations, governance paradigms. So we have to ask yourself. So the question I want you to ask yourself is, who is the president or prime minister? And how long is it before the next election? We're talking about international relations. We got to understand the governance structure of that state, of that continent, of the governance structure where you're operating in. And we need to establish the long-range agenda for the country and determine the contracting or fiscal policy that may be present based on the international relations governance agenda. Now, in the United States of America, we have Republican presidents. Typically, you're going to see more of a realistic or realism-based international relations governance policy. Now, as we talked about briefly, you're going to see a national security focus. You're going to see an emphasis on military and economic power instruments. So it's going to be very defense centered. So when we have Republican presidents, you're typically going to see an emphasis on or increased defense spending. Historically, this may change going forward, but you're going to historically see an emphasis on military and defense spending. We have Democratic presidents in office. You're going to see more of a liberalism-based agenda, where concern for power is often overridden by economic and political considerations. So cooperation, especially economics, is the main foci. So when you got Democratic presidents in office, you'll typically see, this is not a one size fits all, you'll typically see social programs, and you'll see a lot of focus on energy. So right now we're hearing a lot about climate change and what's happening in the energy sector. That's typically what you'll see under a Democratic president. So my whole point for going down this road is I need you to understand there are global forces at work that drive policy in your nation, in your state. Talking about the global state, not, United States of America, South Carolina, Georgia. Talking about states like Uganda, like Liberia. These countries within a continent. So we're talking from a global frame. But I need you to understand that we act locally, but we have to think globally. So I need you to understand the unseen actors that may be at play affecting your business. And we have to be aware of these things. Not saying you got to spend a whole lot of time thinking about them, but you need to be aware that there's some invisible hands moving that are going to directly and indirectly affect your business. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean you're not being impacted. Let's get to the last thing I want to cover. And this is number 6. We got to think about the industry structure considerations. Now, earlier, I talked about competition and market analysis. So now, just briefly, we want to talk about the industry structure. When I talk about industry structure, I'm talking about customers. What are the determinants of that customer's buying power? Do they have bargaining leverage? Are they is it buyer concentration versus firm concentration? What are the buyer switching costs? How easy would it be for them to move away with you and go with a competitor? Are there any kind of price sensitivities? Do you have any kind of brand identity? Do you have strong brand awareness in this place? What are the incentives of decision makers? We're talking about industry structure considerations. Entry. Is it easy to enter the market or is it hard? Do we have brand identity? What are the capital requirements? What is the government policy as it pertains to what you're planning on doing in this new space? What about vendors? Do you understand the determinants of supplier or vendor power? What about substitutes or copycats? How easy or not is it for there to be substitution in the space? These are some things we start talking about market domination. We're talking about from a macro level, thinking macro, but acting micro. Thinking globally, but acting locally. What are the unknown, the unseen, the indirect influences that may hinder my business? So oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we simply only focus on the things we can see. We're thinking about subbing. We're thinking about the OEMs. We're thinking about the contract office. Well, what are those unknown systemics that may be influencing purchasing and buying behavior that I need to start thinking about? Like, I know when there's a Republican president in office, I know that I'm probably going to see an increase in military spending, and I play in the intelligence community. So I know we're going to see an uptick in intel and defense and things related to that, probably even cybersecurity. When there's a Democratic president in place, I probably need to be thinking about my healthcare initiatives. Not that the Republicans don't care about healthcare, because it's important, but I'm probably going to see emphasis in healthcare. I'm definitely going to see an uptick in energy policies. So if I play in those spaces, I need to be able to govern myself accordingly based on the governance paradigms that particular political parties may employ. But that's all I got for you in this video. I hope some of the things I shared in this video really provoked your thought process. It made you kind of look at the world a little differently as you look at how you're going to move in this space. Because I'm all about taking more territory, but we have to do it in a smart, judicious, thoughtful, and in a manner that we're going to be able to manage our risk appropriately. Because as more competition enters the space, my threat for commoditization, my threat for lower profitability goes down. So we want to always go to where the puck is headed, kind of using a hockey example. This is where I'm today. This is where I believe the puck is going to be. How do I get there in a smart, judicious, profitable manner and sustain myself when I'm there? Hope you found some value in this video. I'm going to see you in a future video. And go back and watch some of my other videos. And I'll see you next week. Until next time.